the most socially responsible thing I can do is help other folks who are starting business. So I'm delighted to have today our not only bookkeeper, but our controller, who's also a CPA, who's also been a CPA for public entities, and that's Adrienne Hayward. Why don't you sit down and relax? So we're going to have just a dialogue about some of the things that you need to think about. And first of all, how many of you have a digital on your computer a bookkeeping solution? Okay, one. How many of you have your own business? Great, terrific. And so when you don't have an online version, a layman, I'm not a bookkeeper of any kind, but what I'm used to in old school is sort of a one-write system. So in your checkbook, you've got a lot of magical information. And I mean magical. You can total who you're paying, the categories of payment, where your flow of funds are, and sort of the in, what's coming in, what's going out, and what's the time management of that balance. And you can do that with a checkbook, and in many respects, that's what these online tools do. They're just really a way to plug in. If you write every check online, then everything's there in a register. That register is called a general ledger, and Adrienne can talk to you about what general ledger looks like and what are the things you need to see in a general ledger. When you sit down with a banker, or you talk to an uncle who might give you some money for your next project, you're going to want to show some sense of a plan. And a plan starts with a general ledger. Another thing a plan or a business has is the ability to generate a PL, or a profit and loss statement. So this profit and loss statement is going to tell us what came in, what was my total revenue, what were my expenses against that revenue. And even on revenue, on money coming in, you might have different categories of revenue. There might be something that you sell retail, and there might be a service. So you want to categorize that revenue, and then you might have categories of expenses. This is where it gets exciting. We're going to review this with Adrienne in a slower way, but I just want to touch upon the big things that I think about when I started business. So the next category on your income, if you look at a profit and loss, and we're going to show you one, is so what came in, what's the total money that came in, or what's projected to come in if you're thinking about the future profit and loss, what that's going to look like, and then what are our expenses. So the first category of expenses are expenses that relate to the thing I did, and those are cost of goods sold. Bankers call it COGS, cost of goods sold, C-O-G-S. That's the first big category. Because, in other words, so in one of my businesses, let's say our boat, we have 2 ships, we do boat rides, right? So in cost of goods sold is the guy driving the boat, the fuel that goes in the boat, the food and beverage that we're putting on the boat to sell to you on a boat ride. If we deduct all those things, the cost of the actual boat rides, we then get a line on your profit and loss statement called gross profit. That's my profit from the boat rides, right? If I do 10 boat rides, I'm more profit than if I do 1, but it pretty much stays consistent because the expenses there have nothing to do with the office, the rent, the folks making the phone calls to try and get people to rent the boat from us, sales. That's not necessarily cost of goods sold. Cost of goods sold is you give us $5,000 to rent our boat. It costs us $2,000 to drive the boat, and we're making a $3,000 gross profit. So that sounds really good, except if I do 10 parties, $3,000 gross profit, and I made $30,000, that's probably not enough to pay for the rent to park the boat, or the rent in the office for the people selling. So that's that next category in your profit and loss called what, G&A? General and administrative. General and administrative expenses, right? G&A. So after my gross profit, what are the events or the thing I'm doing cost? If I'm retailing something, what does it cost to make it and give it out? So, but I might have to start with an inventory. So if I had to build a business, there's G&A in there. There's general and administrative expenses. And then at the bottom of that is an EBITDA. That sounds like such a fancy acronym, and it is sort of fancy, but basically, it's a profit before I pay taxes and interest and things related to debt service. So the proper words in the EBITDA are
earnings before interest, taxes, and depreciation.
what did I make before I paid my loan off, my interest, the depreciation of that loan, and Adrian can explain it if there's a question regarding that, and the taxes and the interest, right? And then, finally, at the end of all that, you have a net profit. Now, why is that important? Why do you need all these categories? Because you might be starting a business. It sounds like some of you are. And you might be just transitioning to digital bookkeeping. And so, you need to say, look, my G&A, my general and administrative plans are to have this great office in downtown Brooklyn. I think I can grow. I think I can pay a loan off, and that's going to be that interest. But right now, I don't have that money. You know what? That's okay. Because look at me, I've got a plan where my gross profit, that profit on the top, that's good. That's good. I'm making a certain amount of money. I think I got a plan where I can make $50,000 by doing this. This is what goes in, this is what goes out. But Mr. Banker or Angel Investor or State of New York or various other organizations or Downtown Development Organization or EDC or SBNYC, a lot of these organizations that want to hear, how can we help you? They want to hear, I've got a game plan to make some money, but it doesn't really pay for my office and my expenses and my staff. So then they want to hear, well, what's your plan on that general and administrative expenses? Are you going to hire how many employees? Do you need 4 employees at the beginning? No, probably not. But you might have a scalable plan where I can start with 1, then put my wife or my daughter or myself on the books. I'm going to struggle at first, but here's my plan. And then I'm going to pay for the following more employees to help me grow the business. And they want to hear that. And so that's in my view, a very important sheet, that P&L, which comes out of that general ledger, which is nothing more than a checkbook. Okay? That's the magic of bookkeeping. The next thing, when you start to get fancy, to talk to accountants, and I got to tell you folks, I'm 44 years old, I've been building businesses since I'm 12, I've been featured in a lot for the businesses that I've built around the world, in Israel, in Latin America, here in the United States, wine bar on the Upper East Side, 2 ships, technology, but I got to tell you, look at me, I went to law school, I do not know what a balance sheet is. I know what it is, I know what it means to me, but I'm not so interested in all these great things that accountants teach me. So I get myself a good bookkeeper who can kind of work that out. So the next thing that's on your minds, after the general ledger, your checkbook, the P&L, profit and loss, projections associated with that, is your balance sheet. What does it really mean? What is the summary of my, am I saying this right, liabilities and assets? What does this thing have as a value? And there's some confusing concepts there, which Adrian will talk about as well. But if you look at what these things look like, a PL and a balance sheet and a general ledger, I got news for you, you're ready. You're ready to begin having a dialogue that I think makes sense to bankers and to yourself and to your business plan. One more point about software. So Quicken or Quickbooks, these are very simple products, and they can allow you to grow. There are fancier ones. I would urge you to avoid anything much fancier than that at the beginning of a company, but I'd urge you to ask your accountant what they like. Most of these software are compatible, and they're downloadable, and they can translate from an online resource to your accountant. So for example, when our accountant does our taxes, we press a button. He just jumps in there and gets all of our data. We argue them and we fight with him and all kinds of other things. That's fun. That becomes a fun thing later on in life. Where at the beginning, you need an infrastructure that allows you to pay your checks, but putting them in general ledger, spits out a P&L and a balance sheet. You have that without your accountants, folks. You have that right from day one. You have them at hello if you do this right.